Hey, I'm Sean Bagby, and you're listening to the APTA Academy of Leadership and Innovation podcast, a place where leadership sparks possibilities and innovation lights the path ahead. Each month, we're trying to speak with trailblazers shaping the story of physical therapy. Today's conversation will be with Dr. Alex Bendersky. Did I pronounce that right?
Close enough. I've been
Close
there.
enough. Sorry, man. I was trying to get it right.
Perfect.
Alex, before we get started, why don't you just give everyone a general overview of who you are and what you've done so far in this
Well,
field?
thank you, Sean. I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate everything that the APTA and ALI are doing for our community. So I am a dinosaur physical therapist with a very, very long history of clinical care. I followed a traditional path of clinical development and did all of the extra letters and certifications. And then I have entered a health tech space about a decade ago, initially through hardware, but more recently through software and different platforms. So I am a hybrid. I consult and help health technology organizations find their proper market fit. I teach and I also treat episodically. So I'm pretty much an old geezer who's still trying to find his feet.
Don't worry, I'm an old geezer still trying to find where I fit too, so it's okay.
Yeah.
As long as we're both there, we'll do fine together.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested because you know I am a private practice owner and we have small clinics and we've started to do better on adaptation and use of RTM. From your perspective, where does RTM fit in to modern physical therapy, and how do we get better adoption of it from everyone out there clinically?
So it's a wonderful question, Sean, and I think RTM is by all means an absolute necessity in a well-rounded clinical care delivery model. But RTM as a system is mislabeled and misaligned. What we call RTM really should be called true hybrid care. And RTM is a system of reimbursement. So RTM codes are codes that were designed to allow clinicians and business owners to generate revenue from presence of the technology that allows extension of care beyond clinic walls. And so the way a clinic owner or the way a clinic developer sets up the system, whether it's an extension of care through messaging application, through a digitized home exercise program, or through any combination of the above, that really is what hybrid system is should be. If you look into the episodes of care, uh, right now systems that don't use RTM based products, it's disunited. So each episode of care is its own process. Systems that do use RTM based products create a true hybrid ecosystem, which unites all of the episodes of care.
Yeah, I really appreciate your definition of hybrid there because I think that is a better definition of it. So I think that simplifies it for people to think about when you talk about hybrid care. What is one area where like you see clinicians not being able to, they're doing the hybrid care, they're just not comfortable billing or doing those portions of it? How do we get people more reticent to provide the care, to document and provide the care that they're already doing in order to demonstrate the value of the hybrid model?
Yeah, so I think we as an industry have, and as a discipline have a misalignment of value allocation. What we see as valuable, the way we practice is we value these. We don't value this. A true hybrid care model values expansion and extension of your intelligence and your capacity, your clinical capacity beyond your hands-on care. So we almost artificially created an entrapment within a clinic walls that doesn't allow further extension of clinical services, and that is what these systems are. So a clinician who is looking for true value allocation, your value can be provided and allocated by provision of care that is asynchronous by digitizing your services, by digitizing your expertise. And that's the expansion, right? So then if you are just a skilled professional, you can do this all day. But if you're an expert professional, you can externalize your expertise through these digital ecosystems.
That is a great example. So, one of the things that is near and dear to my heart is rural and medically underserved areas. Can you talk about how hybrid care actually would benefit those populations?
So in what context? Can you give me a little bit more clarity?
Just because there's limited providers in an area,
Mhm.
but it allows us to have a greater impact on the amount of patients we can serve.
Well, absolutely. I think we already have a access problem everywhere in the United States, not just in the rural areas, but our access problem is due to limited resources and also limited availability and affordability of care. So any digital structure and any digital product, whether it's an RTM-based product or whether it's a true digital-only product or a true hybrid system where you have a digital entry point and then transition to in-person care extends and expands accessibility because digital ecosystem is not dependent on brick and mortar sites. So any digital structure, and again, RTM being one of the products that is available, democratizes accessibility because you can enter a system on your own time through your own household without any geographic constraints. So that's, I think that that is the objective is to create a foundational model where access to musculoskeletal care is available and affordable through a digital domain.
So as we move forward in building these digital and hybrid models, what is the one area that you think we need to educate on as far as our new grad DPTs and PTAs that are coming out into the workforce?
So I think the new grads and early career clinicians is where we have the greatest opportunity because there is an adoption curve to the technology adoption curve. And the new entrants into the field of physical therapy are digital natives. They have grown up from the beginning with technology. They don't know nature and the world without technology. You and I are digital converts. We started our life without technology and then slowly had to adapt to technology based on its arousal, right? So digital natives are the ones that can actually show us and teach us how to use the system better. Now, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to create a system that rewards new entrants into this industry for their knowledge and their entrepreneurship and their expertise that actually changes the system. In essence, it's a power mismatch. The ones that make the decisions about the digital infrastructure are also the ones that understand it least. The people who rise to power are the people that did not grow up with technology. So when they allocate resources, they don't understand the true value allocation, as well as a 25-year-old kid who just finished PT school or PTA school, who actually has known technology, is probably vibe coding like on his free time. Like that is the person I want heading my digital pro infrastructure. I don't want a 75-year-old heading my digital infrastructure. No offense to 75-year-olds.
No, but so we've actually, and I don't want to say this wrong to explain it, but we've seen in practice that the demographic that wants the hybrid model is not always the younger demographic age-wise.
Mhm.
So as we're talking about that, how do we help meld those two where the patients that are putting a greater value on this can get are the digital dinosaurs tend to want to how do we build that connection point between the newer providers that probably are going to have a better skill set and the patient population that wants this service?
It's true, and actually, there's a lot of empirical evidence that shows that we tend to age discriminate against individuals of a certain age for consuming digital healthcare. And then, if you look at the actual usability and system usability scores, individuals over age 65 have some of the highest satisfaction scores from digital consumption. But at the same time, wants and needs are two different domains. And while many want digital systems, It is the new entrance into the system that will need digital system. And I think that if you look into how we consume healthcare, the ones that want like, the digital infrastructure are the ones that still prefer to consume healthcare through the traditional method. So they want digital tail, they want digital presence, but the preferred method of consumption is still face-to-face in-person care. The ones that will are evolving to actually need healthcare are the ones that are digital natives. So what you and I are seeing is there's a transition of how we consume healthcare from someone who wants digital presence but still prefers in-person care to those that need digital care because they experience the entire world through digital first. They Uber Eats instead of ordering delivery on the phone, right? They get the car transportation services. They get into that driverless vehicles, Waymos, while you and I are still a little apprehensive about a car without a steering wheel, right? So it's the wants and needs that we need to dichotomize, and that's why you still build a structure for the ones that want it, while developing a hybrid system within legacy products. But then you create a digital first or digital only products for those that are evolving to actually need healthcare consumption, but may not have the platform for it.
Okay. So as we move towards that environment, it's going to take a different type of skill set for our providers. What is the one thing you want every provider to like put in their toolkit right now that makes them better at providing this? And then from an educational point of view, where do we need to go education wise
Uh,
to
so
prepare for this?
Uh, Shannon, I think we are living through the greatest democratization of knowledge and resources in the history of humanity. I would encourage everyone and anyone in our industry to start experimenting with language models that are available, open, and free. Uh, and it's a two-phase system: exploration, exploitation. Start exploring and consume information, especially viable, credible information. YouTube is an excellent resource. Claude has an entire Claude Academy that offers at least 800 hours of education on their platform that you can consume in these very well-designed 8 to 12 minute increments, or you can just take a class. How do I drive code? How do I use agents? How do I build an agent? Now, beyond that, if you want to take a more structured approach, there is Udemy, there is Canva, not Canva, having a senior moment, but there's these certification processes where if you want a more structured tiered approach, and then ultimately YouTube, IBM has an excellent YouTube channel. Open AI has an excellent YouTube channel. A lot of these posts are available. A lot of these classes are available. MIT and Harvard has Introduction to AI curriculum available for free on their website. So you just don't get credits. But if you're not doing it to earn college credits, you can take the entire curriculum and you become educated. But ultimately, even beyond that, like just start explore, type away, start playing with these models, and just remember that these models are not search engines. That the biggest mistakes we make is that these models are tools that are built on large data sets. And so when you are using a search engine logic, you're actually not optimizing the delivery. But if you understand how to use these large data sets to obtain information and to break down information and to consume information, then it's actually a brilliant way. So,
And I think you bring out a very good point that I think it takes people who are using AI a lot to understand is like that. For someone that is just starting to use it, what is the best approach you would tell someone to like if you're using AI to do it in the like Google search is I think a prime example of what people tend to do. How
mhm.
do you try to get people out of that mindset into a different mindset of using a different approach to their questioning?
There's two. I think anyone who has the luxury of having someone who is younger next to them, have somebody else guide you through it, guide you through the introduction into the proper prompt engineering, proper uh, AI prompting process. If you don't have it available, one of the best ways is most people don't know that you can ask AI to teach you how to use AI. I know it's kind of a weird thing, but like it's metacognitive, right? But you can prompt ChatGPT to please show me how to use basics on how to use large language models, and it will create a brilliant step-by-step process of teaching how to use these programs. Same goes for prompt engineering for from these language models. You can actually ask Claude or ChatGPT, create a prompt for task X, Y, and Z, and it will create a brilliant prompt that is so much better than anything you can ever write. And then you can automatically plug that prompt to get the information you're looking for. So unlike Google search, where you go in with goal-oriented search logic, with AI, you don't need to have a goal-oriented logic. You have to have a open learning logic, so that you're willing to learn, and then you just prompt these engines to provide information for you.
Yeah, and I will say one of the ones that kind of triggered my ability to do it better was a conversation I had where someone was saying, treat it like it's a 5 year, like you're a 5 year old,
Hmm.
and constantly asking like the three why approach onto what we're trying to get. And then that helps build your better prompt. And then if you do that, my personal experience, if I do that long enough, it helps me develop that prompt set question that
Hmm.
I'm really trying to look at, and especially if I'm using it for something to look at blind spots in my thinking or something like that.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, like Charlie Munger has had like his heuristic was inversion logic, which I find that like inversion prompting is like help me create an inversion logic from my chain of thought, and it gives you that opposite thought process, which like for me like these models are essentially idea partners. I don't. I have enough ideation, but I need a like especially when like you're a hybrid employee and you're working from home, you need someone else to bounce ideas from. And I found that these systems are perfect idea partners, and because they do provide enough feedback. And as long as you have a BS meter where you can identify when information that you're being provided is not valid, because it does hallucinate, it does give you a lot of information that to please you rather than to give you information. You can get a lot smarter from it. I mean, I've personally benefited immensely from these systems in the last couple of years because I no longer spend time researching as much, right? I still research, but when I research now, I use AI tools like Consensus, which is or Open Medicine or anything else that like I know they're reliable tools that are referenced and I can select the level of empirical evidence that I'm looking for. But when I prompt Consensus to give me data or give me research on a specific topic, I know that it's only going to pull research from level one or level two studies. I know it's going to pull research from the last 5 years. And I know that the summary it gives me is actually going to give me a connection map to all the other points of research and how this information is connected. So that actually just opens up. It's a slippery slope, right? Because then you wind up going into that, like down the rabbit hole of going deeper and deeper into this. But that's like that wasn't available before. It used to, if you knew you wanted to research a specific topic, you went on Google Scholar, you created your research prompt, and then you had your articles. You read your articles, you created a summary. Now that's like you go 20 steps ahead. So,
yep. No, I agree. Um, so with a switch in this direction, where do you see the early adapters? I'd say we're in an early adapter phase right now in healthcare. Where do you see we hit that tipping point where we get kind of tidal volume of change that we're no longer there, but it's a wide scale adoption? How long do you think that's going to be before we start seeing that?
if you need a number, I think year 2030 is going to be the year where like we are less than 5 years away from these systems becoming default systems rather than being choice systems. You're already more or less there. Maybe not in healthcare, right? So maybe professionally, especially as physical therapists, we're just definitely not there. We're late adapters as an industry. But in healthcare as a whole, we're definitely there as a society in the United States. Most of information we consume is AI fabricated or at least AI curated. So it's not when we're already there. difference is that by year 2030, you're going to be voluntold to use these systems. Right now, you still have to volunteer. You still have to make an effort, but that's when it switches. And in the default logic, the choice architecture changes where you no longer have a choice. You have to opt out of this in order for this to be true. So yeah, it's here and it's going to be omnipresent in the next couple of years.
Okay. 5 years is a lot shorter time frame than I was really thinking of on that.
Yeah.
And I do think you're right. In society, we were much quicker at adapting it. Um, I think in healthcare, it's a little bit slower, and I can't, especially in physical therapy, I don't always understand the reason why we're slower
We're
adopters.
rigid. We're just a rigid workforce. We are see hammer and nail to the grave. Like we're hammers and we see nails everywhere and we just want to nail them down. If you look at like do this thought experiment, like when was the last time you had to use a phone book? Like you hopefully you're of the age where you remember phone books.
I,
The right like so like I the first three PT organizations I worked for started with the letter A because that was how you would name your clinic. You would name your clinic with letter A because when somebody's searching for a physical therapy provider, they would open the phone book and go like A. I'm going to go
Mhm.
to this one based on location. So like the phone book, and look how quickly that switched once search engines became popular, right? Like that switch from being a default phone book to optional search engine to default search engine with an optional phone book to phone book being not being present anymore. I think same is going to happen with these models where these models now are still evolving, but in the next couple of years, that's not going to be evolution anymore. That they like everything else you're using is going to be a phone book. If you choose to look at phone book, I'm sure you can find a phone book somewhere. I'm sure they're still in production and like maybe, right? But who needs it? Like why? Like why would you want to subject yourself to it? Maybe if you need like some firewood or fire starters that like that. Yeah.
I can't tell you the last time I saw a phone book. Actually was talk. I've got teenage children. I was talking to them about the phone book the other day, and they
Dude,
both looked
yeah,
at the
I
screen.
do too. So my kid just got back from college, and we're always having these like these point references. We saw a payphone like at one of the gas stations, like in Iowa, and I'm like, oh my God, like that's a payphone. And my kid was like, huh? That's
I can't imagine even running across the payphone at this point.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's like I know in non penal system, non
Yeah,
prison system, right?
no, that's 100% true. So as we're kind of moving forward in the transition in the world, what do you think like the mindset is that we need to change to get out of being the hammer that drives the nail into more open thinkers in this profession?
I think, Sean, we have an interesting tension where we have a lot of humility, but we are failing to have intellectual humility. We are so philosophy dogmatic drivers. Like once you integrate into a specific philosophy, maybe treatment philosophy, maybe clinical philosophy, we stick to that philosophy again to the grave. Like if you're a McKenzie therapist, then you are always a McKenzie therapist. You can be open-minded that sometimes directional movement is good, sometimes directional movement is not good. It's like some right product for the right customer. We are just a very rigid, linear thinkers. And we need to have intellectual humility, understand what you don't know, and be humble, be accepting to the fact that knowledge evolves and knowledge actually has a half-life. So the first tool is to create enough humility to understand that what we know is only going to be true for the next couple of years. So there are three sets of truths. There is an absolute truth that is undeniable. The first principles, right? We are most likely on planet Earth, most likely the third planet from the sun, most likely in a like a pretty high probability. But these are the first principles. Like you're not going to question first principles because it's really hard to disprove it. But then there's relative truths and everything you and I learned in school. Like you have a master's in healthcare administration. I have a
Mhm.
master's in healthcare administration. Like, I think most of the principles I've learned in 2003. Absolutely, right? Like it's been more than 2 decades. So where do we go from there? Well, I'm reading on business literature. I'm updating my beliefs, and with updated beliefs, I question what I've learned before. So these are relative truths, right? They just have to evolve. And then there are personal truths. And I think as an industry, as physical therapists, we are almost exclusively personal truth driven. Like, I am this philosophy. That's a personal truth. Like, just because you invested into these courses and into these certificates does not mean that your personal truth is superior to somebody else's personal truth. It's like you can build a business on it, you can create a niche practice on it, you can certainly find a following, especially if you're good at what you do. But that's still a personal truth because like it doesn't have a lot of empirical evidence, and until proven otherwise, it's that tiered system of truth. So what to answer your question, I think intellectual humility is the key. Understand that what you think you know is probably just a fraction of what you need to know. There's a simple thought experiment, which is a zipper effect. Can you explain to someone else how a zipper works? And I think it shows you how little knowledge we actually have. We've liberated and we've outsourced knowledge to someone else. So I know a zipper, I can visualize a zipper, but to actually explain in principle the mechanism of how zipper works, like, oh, like, and it's like it's a zipper effect applied to everything else. Like understand that you what you think you know, you don't know, and you only know the basic concept and the foundation fundamentals, but you need to know more. So be open to new knowledge.
I think that is extremely accurate and well put because I do think we get very dogmatic of like I am statements in this field and it's not true and I had this conversation with another therapist a couple weeks ago. It's like we get into this I am mentality and
Hmm.
forget that like we're not even the owner of the story.
Hmm.
The owner of the story is the patient.
Hmm.
It's their journey. We're just on it.
Yeah. There's a really good book. So Steven Pinker is there's a couple of authors you follow, right? Like and Steven
Mhm.
Pinker is just I don't know, he hits me the right way. And his new book is about what thinks everybody knows or something like that. And it's a title about metacognition and metametacognition. It's the inference of what I think you think and what you think you think and what I think you think I think you think. In a patient encounter, it's the patient is a consumer always. Like the patient always is always right. When I had my territory, when I ran a larger cohort of clinicians, for me, the first lesson to teach both young clinicians and also new clinicians in my system was that the patient has their own set of beliefs, and you have to align with them. You have to work with them, and then potentially slowly change them if they're maladaptive. If their beliefs don't fit their end goal, which is to get better, it's your job to convince them otherwise. But it's the patient's beliefs. But it's that cognitive, metacognitive, metametacognitive state where your thoughts against my thoughts, and what I think you know is not what you think I think you know. Um,
No, well said. Well said. Um, as we kind of move through this, what is what is kind of like that, and I'm going to ask you to kind of be a predictor here. As we move into this next version of society and the doubling of information resources, what do you think the next big change in healthcare and more specifically physical therapy is going to be?
Well, I'll give you my optimistic worldview and then I'll give you my pessimistic worldview. My optimistic worldview is that we have an immense opportunity to step into the void in the US healthcare system. Like right now is the best opportunity for physical therapy, allied health professionals to step into the vacancy of primary care practitioners, absence of knowledge and absence of resources in musculoskeletal care and rehabilitative care. And the way I would summarize it is that there's not enough physicians out there. There's not enough primary care practitioners. And the ones that are out there don't have the bandwidth or the training to provide musculoskeletal care. So we're it. Look, we are here. We're available. So that is our opportunity. The pessimistic view is that we are ingrained. We are doubling down on a fee-for-service model and not looking for new quantifiable and qualified ways of getting reimbursed for our care. We are continuing to be discounted as professionals. We're not extracting value from other health resources from payers. And we're fighting for a 3% revenue increase without realizing that maybe that's not the revenue source you should be looking for. And so the pessimistic view is that we potentially will have a fork in our professional evolution where you're going to have a fringe cohort of professionals that will deviate and will enter the cash only business, which will further disengage from a larger cohort of patients that need to consume care because the rate of consumption is going to be dependent on the affordability of care. And then the rest will go into that high volume resource, which is going to be essentially a race to the bottom. Where, like, if you're seeing 18 patients a day, why not see 20 patients a day? And if you're seeing 20 patients a day, now let's see 22 patients a day, and which has already been the case with a lot of these organizations that have driven this like this volume-based matrix. So the pessimistic view is that if we don't update our payer system, if we don't participate in value-based processes, if we don't at least engage in direct employer systems, we are going to go by this fork where you'll have a 10 to 20% of the workforce that will engage in these pockets of care, which can afford your $200, $250 an hour. And then 80% of our resources will have to provide high volume care, high volume, potentially suboptimal care.
So you just hit one of the sweet spots. I don't know how much you know about me, but one of my sweet spots is payment.
Mhm.
As in, I really believe we have to advocate for the change there. How do you see us justifying our true value and worth when part of what we do is prevent something that is not seen? So, like, if we stop an MRI, how do you justify that, like, us treating a patient, we stopped an MRI? How do we quantify that into value that is important for A, society, and B, for insurance companies?
So step one, we have a identity and a labeling problem. And what we do, the product that we provide out there is mislabeled, which is we're labeling our services based on the CPT codes that we use to charge for these services. Manual therapy is not manual therapy. Manual therapy is central and peripheral nervous system modulation tool that allows your functional neurological system to adapt to the new constraints that you're putting in front of it. Therapeutic exercise is not therapeutic exercise, is tissue habituation process under a specific clinical load that needs to be supervised and monitored based on your capacity in the moment, based on your tissue health in the moment, right? Neuromuscular reeducation is not neuromuscular reeducation. Neuromuscular reeducation is your adaptive habituation curve that works with your environment to allow you to create a better fit for your immediate surface. So, like, we need to change how we label these processes because as long as we're labeling them as therapeutic exercise, well, of course, I can do exercise on my own. I can stream a YouTube video and I'm doing exercise. In manual therapy, well, all you did was just push on my back for 20 minutes or 10 minutes. Like, no, right? Like that was the force, that was the part of your anatomy, but you don't understand my clinical principles, my goals for applying that type of force, that level of force, and what like so the first problem is labels. We need to change labels. The second problem is we assume payers don't know our true value. That's not true. Payers actually know our true value. They choose to discount us because we're not lobbying against it. We're not creating an environment where all of a sudden there's going to be absence of our care deliverables. We're willing to provide care at a discounted rate, and the payers know it, and they're willing to go along with it. If the restaurants you go to, you continue to only leave half the bill. Like if you're charged $50 for a meal and you consistently only pay $25 for the meal, and the restaurant owners are gonna be like, okay, I guess $25 is all I get today. Like then next time you might as well just give them $20, right? Because it like that's that precipitous slope down like that negative feedback loop, right? Changing it is having a conversation, but not with the payers. I think at a certain point, I think a direct to employer model is a viable model where payers may not be willing partners in a conversation. They don't, if they're not willing partners in a conversation, if they're not showing agility and availability to open the resources to us, then we just need to go around it. So direct employer model, 50% of all businesses in the United States are self-insured. The payers, they contract the systems to govern and to supervise their payment model, but they're still paying you. why are we not going directly to employers? Why are we afraid to go to an employer and propose a deal that will provide some level of guarantee? However, the third constraint here is, are we willing to guarantee outcomes? Are we willing to stand by our product, right? And that's where I was run into resistance, where if you ask someone that, are you willing to get paid $400 a visit? But with the caveat that you have to deliver maximum impact of care in 4 visits or less, and then still guarantee clinical outcomes for the next 6 months. Are you willing to? So that's $1,600, right? A typical musculoskeletal encounter is between $1,600 and $2,200. Like
Right.
that's more or less, right? Like depending on region, depending.
Yeah.
So if you want to get that $1,600, if your end goal is to get $1,600 from a encounter, and right now it's being stretched into 30 visits, which consumes your resources, consumes your care, consumes like your bandwidth, and now you're operating on a 3% margin. So you're barely just making ends meet. Why not operate? All you want to get is that $1,600. Why not get it in 4 visits and then create a digital system where you can create an environment where the patient can still consume healthcare, but just not through the same resource. So look, there's a lot of change we can make, and I want $1,600 because I know that's my end goal. Is this encounter is worth $1,600. But if I only do it in 4 visits, pay additional X amount of revenue for the digital hybrid provider that is going to be willing to supervise that individual and get the buy-in from the patient that, look, I know you like my company. I like your company. I like you. You like me. But you're not buying a friendship. You're buying expertise. And my expertise is that 6 weeks, 8 weeks encounter, that episode of care in a holistic recovery trajectory is nothing. It's nominal. Based on tissue-specific recovery trajectory, recovery lasts a year to 4 years. Like most of the tissues adapt over a much larger time frame than what our episodes of care can provide. And
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why patients continue to recur, continue to consume our healthcare, is that we give them just enough to feel better, just enough to be discharged. Then, once they're discharged, they go into the same negative habits because they have no support system. And then in 6 months, you see them again. They have another flare. They have another episode. Like it's discontinued care, and we're culprits. So sorry, that was a very long answer to your question.
No, no, I think it's good. And I sit on kind of two realms of this. I think you're right in a lot of instances, but I also think like there is a need in certain populations and for like greater episodes of care.
Hmm.
I would say that like in certain populations, especially in like the complex patient, we're much better adapted at providing long-term
Hmm.
intervention than GP in a lot of those
Oh,
realms. And because we know that movement is usually the biggest thing that can help control a lot of either side effects from medication or need for medication in general if we can get someone to change habits. And so I think there is a need for that. I think the thing is it's a continuum of connection to care.
hmm.
So I'm not big on like the like shrinking visits of care in that. I get where you're coming from on like a clean case, but I do think there's a lot of other cases where it's probably we need higher levels of intervention and we need to be able to establish that into a continuum of care model that understands like that is cheaper than the whatever it is. Say a hospitalization for a CHF patient who didn't get started early, lost mobility, lost movement, now is retaining increased fluid and things like that. So if we can communicate with a GP and help get them medicine or the specialist and get medicine and get them moving, and then we decrease and we prevent that hospitalization, we saved tens of thousands of dollars in the system and resources. But I think we've got to look at it from those angles too, of like we really are the provider that can do a lot of things in a lot of different areas depending on the person that shows up in front of us.
Uh, Sean, 100% agree with you. I think what we do though is we cluster episodes into 3 times a week for 4 weeks. So if you look into that recovery trajectory literature, and if you look into that disease-specific literature, the maximum impact of clinical care provision comes at visit four. It's diminishing return after visit four, but it does not mean that there is no not like absence of return. It's just diminishing return. If you space out your 12 visits that you wanted to have over a span of a year, and if you maximize impact, where you also have to remember the people you are referring to, most people with CHF are not consuming physical therapy where they need to be. We're also segregated to provide musculoskeletal care to musculoskeletal only patients. I think anyone who's receiving chemotherapy should be at least have one episode of care, at least one visit with a physical therapist. Anyone who's been diagnosed with heart disease needs to see a physical therapist. Anyone who has a BMI over 30 needs to see a physical therapist. Because barriers to mobility, barriers to movement are the drivers for the chronicity and chronification.
Yeah.
But it's a different construct, right? So that's where dentists see you twice a year before your cleaning. It's routine cleaning because you have been culturally indoctrinated to believe and to know that you need to see a dentist twice a year or your teeth are going to rot. You need to see a physical therapist twice a year, potentially, or your movement system is going to rot, especially if you're over age 40, especially if you have more than two comorbidities that have a higher probability of having a downstream effect. But that doesn't mean that you need to see them for 3 times a week for 6 weeks,
No, I
right?
100% agree.
Right. So that's why like I agree with you 100%. I think physical therapy is one of the least underutilized, well, I should say most underutilized clinical resources out there because there is so much empirical evidence about physical therapy being a value-added agent for oncological care. Now, people who are receiving chemotherapy who actually encounter physical therapy source have better outcomes. What are the odds, right? Fall prevention, like it's like falls over age 65 is a huge cost to the US economy. It's a huge cost to healthcare systems. Physical therapists have a track record, like a 30-year track record of having positive response, positive impact. Why are we not systematically guaranteeing that each senior citizen will be given at least 2 visits to a physical therapist over age 60, 65? Like that's like it's a given, but that takes a societal shift. We need to change the public awareness. We need to actually have every single physician recommend this. We need every single stakeholder. We need payers. We need federal payer to create a mandate that you need to see a physical therapist for a structured, aligned, clinical guidance aligned care provision. Right. So yeah, I do not disagree with you. Actually, I'm on the same page as you. But the only caveat is that how we're accustomed of delivering care is through these small episodes of intense care provision instead of spaced out care provision.
No, I agree. And like I just like I like the real life examples, and I'll give you this because you brought up chemo. I've got a niece who is 11 years old who had rhabdosarcoma
Mhm.
and ended up with neuropathy um, secondary to the chemo. And if my brother wasn't a physical therapist, they would not have sent her to physical therapy.
Hmm.
Because like they had to ask for it. They
Hmm.
had to say, no, like this is not normal movement. This is dysfunctional movement pattern. We need her to be seen, and this isn't how her movement was before chemo started. Or
Hmm.
else that's another example of someone who's young that starts out that has a cancer, will beat the cancer, but then we've diminished their quality of life because we've taken away movement.
Yeah. So think of it also. I think again the labeling problem is that we see movement as mobility. Movement is energy consumption. Energy is not a limitless source. So your energy efficiency, like your fuel economy, is a good predictor for general health. And so if your car is operating on vapor and you're doing 6 miles a gallon, and the next gas station is pretty far away, you're in trouble. We are the gas station. Like physical therapists are the gas station. You optimize that engine to run smoother to consume energy better. So yeah, physical therapy is that. But again, are we on record to recommend that, or are we still being clustered that, oh yeah, I had physical therapy last time I had my ACL tear, right? Like, or I had physical therapy after my rotator cuff surgery. Like we have an identity crisis where we're identified as someone who you go to after surgery, or someone who you go to after trauma, or someone like, and that's why I think your niece's oncologist didn't even think about physical therapy because he doesn't have that association. Like we need to build that association that like because while your brother is a physical therapist, he can advocate. Most people are not physical therapists. They will not advocate, right? So,
And most people wouldn't even know. And again, like this would bring me to a soapbox, and we don't need to go down this rabbit hole. But like, have we done that to our own selves with our dogmatic approach of I am? Because it has led to, and with the payer pressures, it's led us to see those 22 patients a day where you can't fully invest your energy level into it and give them what they need. And so we have crappy therapists out there that treat substandard,
mhm.
and that becomes what is known in our industry. And so like again, this is where I love these conversations because we can tie all these up in a pretty bow of like changing our thought and changing our stance is going to help us get to someplace else because that's where we've got to go.
I think a single base level ground source of objective truth. Again, even if you choose not to create clinical guideline coordinate care, even if you choose not to align with evidence-guided care, you need to create at least objectivity in your encounter. And like, Sean, I've been on this for 20 plus years where a ground source of truth has to be objective, it has to be measurable, it has to be quantifiable. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm in tech is that tech is your ground source of truth. Like computer vision provides granular data. Your force plate, if you choose to invest into it, provides granular data. You can always argue about the level of granularity, the precision, the applicability, but it's still data. Like, and as long as you are systematic about measurement and retest, it's still better than anything you do, which is more subjective, more ambiguous. And you're right, there's a lot of ambiguity into what physical therapy looks like because you go to 5 different physical therapy clinics, you're going to have 16 different experiences. Like
Yeah.
it, even in the same clinic, I see patients out of a cash first, higher level clinic in a very nice neighborhood in Chicago in the area. Now there is 6 or 7 really good clinicians, higher level clinicians, advanced certified clinicians, and even there's no standardization because we believe in our freedom of practice. But without a base standardization, I'm going to deliver very different care than my colleague next door because I am NIAMT fellow therapist. Somebody else is going to be Mackenzie certified therapist. And so I'm looking from different optics. But the ground source of truth is that movement efficiency. We're trying to optimize movement efficiency. At least we can agree on that, right? But who do you think is the stakeholder who needs to standardize? Like who needs to create a mandate that you need to have a one level of truth across the entire enterprise before you move on to anything else? Should it be the payer? Should it be the federal government? Should we be self-governed?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I honestly don't know. I'd say self-governance is the best because I don't like a federal mandate on anything really. Um, I don't think the federal government can get much right. See Washington D.C. right now. And so like I really feel like governance is a part of it. However, I think you hit something that like a lot of clinicians miss, and it's probably something that I think higher level clinicians do is test retest.
Mhm.
And I think test retest is the ultimate truth when it comes to physical therapy because you're willing to say, like at the start of a treatment session, I'm going to look at this and my job is to improve it by the end of treatment. And it's either going to work or it doesn't. And that's going to tell us two things, right? If it worked, great. I know what the heck I'm doing. If it didn't work, well, I shot down the wrong hole. How do I make sure next time I'm not wrong? And I,
Yeah.
I think like if you can do that, like even if we have different versions of care, if we can come to the truth of like this patient in front of us needs to improve whatever, shoulder internal rotation, and I test it before and after, and it doesn't improve, well then I've gone down the wrong rabbit hole. That's my fault. That's not the patient's.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there we again going back to intellectual humility, where it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. You make as many mistakes as you can. I used to have well, I still like it's 51% substance, 49% bullshit, right? Like it's like I told that to my residents, I told that to my students, I told that to my colleagues that like as long as you're providing 51% substantiated care that is at least aligned with some level of clinical evidence, the 49% can be whatever you want to do. Like if you want to put cocoa butter on people, if you want to do cupping, if you want to do it's fine. Like if you read some experiment that like a beeswax helps something, yes, why not? But 51%, you cannot tip a scale beyond. Like if 51% of your care is BS, that 49% is not going to matter anymore. But that 51% substantiation is on us. It's on you and me. We as a care delivery servants need to align. Because when I go to see my GP, I have some set of expectations, but I know that there's going to be at least 51% substance, right? Even if she recommends a vitamin that I don't need to take, even if she tells me to take a test that I don't need to take, substance is going to be there. With physical therapy, we don't always have that ratio. Like, and so if you are a needler, and dry needling has empirical evidence, but if you ever go see a needler, certified needler, you know you're going to get needled, whether you like it or not, because that becomes your unique tool. Like the biggest predictor of you consuming physical therapy care is if you step through the doors of a physical therapy office. Like you don't have PT clinics turning you away saying that you are actually pretty low on our risk stratification scale, and you have high probability of self-correction. So here's your plan of care that you are going to do on your own. Here is our digital program that I want you to follow. And then please come back in a month where we can reassess. But we don't do that, right? We kind of say like, oh, you're here, great, and you have a prescription for 3 times a week for 6 weeks. Come on in. So
Oh, that is so true. Alex, thank you very much because I think this has been a great conversation. Before we end, I have one question for you. What is the best way for people to follow you or to get more information from you after they listen to this episode?
excellent. Well, so find me on LinkedIn. I tend to pollute LinkedIn with articles and literature because I'm just bored. Uh, I have a direct alliance with an EMR provider called Spry. So I do a lot of my work and a lot of teaching work and a lot of strategy work with Spry. So check out Spry as an EMR system. And I am eternally accessible because I think conversation like this, Sean, is the best way to get things rolling. So LinkedIn, email, phone, any other way you want to access me, I'm available.
All right, awesome. Again, Alex, thank you so much. And thank everyone for joining us today for the Academy of Leadership and Innovations podcast, where leadership advances strategy and innovation, drives our profession forward. And I think Alex is a prime example of that.
Thank
I
you.
hope that today's discussion helps equip people to move with clarity, influence, and purpose. Until next time, continue shaping the future of physical therapy with intention and impact.
Thank you.